Good morning. My name is Amy Lee, and I am the Campus Operations Assistant here at the Fullerton campus. I am married to my hunky husband, Louis Lee, and we have two boys, LJ, which stands for Louis Jr., 7, and Liam, 5 years old. I was born and raised in Korea in a devout Buddhist household. My first exposure to God was in preschool when a classmate asked me if I wanted to come with her to church by promising me free banana milk and bang, which is Korean bread, after it was over. A yellow van came on a Sunday morning, and I can't recall what I learned that day, but I do remember eating the bang with banana milk. So please save some donuts for the visitors each week. My mother passed away when I was 6 years old from stomach cancer, and my father remarried, and we immigrated to the Bay Area in 1987. And for you youngins, it was when Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up was on the radio. My father is an alcoholic that was also very physically abusive. My father's alcoholism and abusive ways led to the divorce in less than 6 months into his second marriage. He was 36 years old, unable to speak the language, and left with nothing after the divorce. My brother and I lived a very hard life where we were left to fetch for ourselves for most of our young lives because my father worked a full-time job during the day as a painter and the graveyard shift at a janitorial company to make ends meet. That meant we sometimes didn't get to live in a home of our own, but renting a room for the three of us, not enough food in the fridge, free breakfasts and lunches at school, and being recipients of food from Christmas food drives through the school district. The only stability in our lives at that time was our home church in Santa Clara. When my father was finally able to afford an apartment of our own, there were more months where we couldn't afford the $735 monthly rent, so the church would step in and pay for our rent and utilities. I grew up with a chip on my shoulder because not only was I trying to hide the physical abuse from my father, I felt inadequate because I didn't have a mother. I learned to hide my pain by putting up a facade of being tough and the illusion that nothing can really hurt me. I hid all of my hurt and taught myself at an early age to just keep pushing through because I am in control. I can fix it and get through it if I just push through. At the age of 19, I ran away from my father's house into the arms of an even more abusive boyfriend. At the first sign of physical abuse, I had too much pride to admit to myself, and more so to my father, that I had made the wrong decision. Instead of leaving, I stuck by my horrible decision for another 5 years in another state, away from all of my family and friends. Now pregnant at the age of 24, I gave birth to a baby girl that died as soon as the umbilical cord was cut. I wondered if God was punishing me for all the sins during the years that I strayed from my family, friends, and the church. I knew that I had to leave, but even after all that had happened, I did not want to face the backlash from everyone back home. Only by God's grace was I able to gather the strength to flee my abuser and return home to San Jose. Fast forward to October 2007, the company that I worked for in NorCal decided to relocate to Irvine, and I followed them to SoCal. My one and only friend in SoCal, Arlene Song at the time, asked me to attend their church because they had just welcomed a new head pastor from Virginia at CPC-EM, and I've been here ever since. All of my growing up as an adult was at CCSC. My premarital, getting married, getting baptized, having children, and having them baptized as infants were all at CCSC. Louis and I even were co-leaders of a newly married group in 2011 and also a mixed group in 2013. But even then, I told my husband that I never really felt connected. In the fall of 2015, I decided to join a women's group without knowing who the leader, Jenny O, and any of its other members were. It was in this safe place that I learned to be open and honest about my past without any shame. But I still prided in the fact that I held it together the entire small group season and never allowed myself to cry. A fire was lit in me at the end of the small group season that I prayed to God to help me grow as a Christian without knowing what that would entail. God answered that prayer as we went on summer break. Starting in June, I started feeling tingling and a drooping sensation on the right side of my face. I self-diagnosed myself through much research on WebMD, and I told my doctor that I had a pinched nerve in my back. He immediately ordered an MRI of my brain and my spine. 2 days later, the doctor called and informed me that he will be referring me to a brain surgeon because I have been diagnosed with hydrocephalus. It is a condition when there is excess fluid in the ventricles of the brain, and a shunt has to be inserted into the brain with a catheter to my stomach to circulate the fluid to alleviate the pressure in the brain. When I Googled hydrocephalus after the phone call, I realized there wasn't any data on middle-aged adults with this condition. And when Google doesn't have the answers, you know it's bad. So instead of calling my husband, my immediate thought was to contact my small group ladies because I didn't know how to tell my husband. I was scared to death, and not only did these ladies help me up, they walked beside me and guided me through it all. By this time, summer small groups started, and if my previous small group season was a season of not cracking and holding it together, this season was the season of falling apart. I couldn't hold back the tears because my fear of the unknown. I was diagnosed in June, but my appointment to see the neurosurgeon was in August. Those weeks seemed like an eternity. My anxiety level was through the roof, and panic attacks were a daily ritual. I felt like I wasn't in control of anything for the first time in my life. I was so angry at God, but didn't feel as though I had the right to be. I cried every night, begging and screaming to God to please let me stay here and try to comprehend why this was all happening. All I ever wanted was to be a wife and a mom so that I can provide my children with the love that I was longing for from my own mother. And I was angry at God because I thought he was trying to take it away from me. This new small group in the summer saw me break down week after week, and many even ugly cried with me week after week. Thank you, Debbie. So many here at CCSC prayed with me and for me and my family. They helped me realize that I was never in control and that God needs to be the one in control. My illusion of control was my idol. Giving up all control to God was and is still so scary, but I found that once I did, it was very freeing at the same time. God has given me everything that I've ever asked for. Everything that God has given me is his, and I am his also. All the prayers were answered when I was able to see the brain surgeon early in July instead of August of that summer. The doctor believes that my condition was most likely brought on by the years of physical abuse and trauma to the head. And while my condition should be monitored every 6 months, he didn't feel that brain surgery is required at this time. Every day since, it is a blessing just to wake up, and I am standing here before you today only by the grace of God, who he is, what he has done, and continue to do in my life. Thank you for listening.